I am going to come back like Independence Day with Jesus, and I'm going to start a war.
Aileen Wuornos stared straight into the camera, eyes wide, expression frozen somewhere between rage and relief. And then she said it. I am going to come back, like Independence Day, with Jesus, and I'm going to start a war. Yeah, that was her final message to the world. This wasn't a line from a horror movie. This wasn't a deleted scene from The Walking Dead. This was Florida's most infamous female serial killer moments before her execution. But how does a girl who once rode her bike barefoot through the snow, begging neighbors for food, become the woman who murdered 7 men and told detectives she did it with no regrets? What snapped? What was real? And what was just manipulation? Today, you're getting the most complete, high-retention breakdown of the stories with pacing that won't make you check the time every 2 minutes. Subscribe if you hate boring crime documentaries. All right, seatbelt on, because this ride is about to get Florida-level chaotic. Eileen Carol Pittman was born on February 29, 1956. Yep, a leap year baby, because, of course she was, in Rochester, Michigan. Her father? A convicted child molester who died by suicide in prison. Her mother? A teenage girl who abandoned Eileen and her brother Keith when Eileen was just a baby. And who raised her? Her grandparents. Except, grandparents is a generous description. Her grandmother was alcoholic. Her grandfather was violent and allegedly sexually abusive. By age 11, Eileen was trading sexual favors to boys in the neighborhood for cigarettes and food. By 14, she was pregnant after reportedly being raped by a family acquaintance. By 15, she was kicked out of the house and forced to live in the woods behind her school. No friends, no money, no family, no stability. Remember this part, not to excuse what she becomes, but to understand the fire that forged her. With no home and no safety net, Eileen turned to street prostitution as a teenager. It wasn't survival sex work. It wasn't empowerment. It was the difference between freezing to death and eating. Her life could have gone in 1,000 different directions, but she was already on a collision course with disaster. By her early 20s, Eileen became a drifter, hitchhiking from state to state, sleeping under bridges, living in abandoned bars. Every day was survival mode. And Florida? Oh, Florida embraced her like a long-lost daughter of chaos. Between 1974 and 1989, Eileen racked up charges like she was trying to complete some kind of criminal bingo card. DUI, disorderly conduct, firing a gun from a moving car, armed robbery, theft, identity fraud, assault, and a whole lot of Eileen lost her mind again moments. But the real turning point came in 1986. That's when she met Tyria Moore, a hotel maid. This was the first stabilizing force in her life, and also the beginning of the end. Eileen fell in love. Hard. Obsessively. To her, Tyria wasn't just a girlfriend. She was the only person who had ever chosen her. And to support their lifestyle, Eileen doubled down on prostitution along the highways. This wasn't glossy TV version prostitution. This was truck stops, dark roads, drunken strangers, violence around every corner, and enough danger to make a Navy SEAL sweat. And one night, something snapped. December 1989. Eileen was picked up by a 51-year-old man named Richard Mallory. Eileen later said Mallory was violent and attacked her. Police records did show Mallory had a criminal past, including sexual assault. But what happened next launched Eileen into legend. She shot Mallory 4 times. Then she stole his car and his wallet and dumped his body in the woods. At first glance, this looked like self-defense. But this is where the story swerves off the road. Because instead of going to the police, Eileen went to a pawn shop. She sold his belongings, and she went right back to the highway. Exactly like nothing happened. And just like that, the killings began. Between 1989 and 1990, Aileen murdered 7 men: Richard Mallory, David Spears, Charles Carskadden, Peter Sims, Troy Burris, Charles Humphreys, and Walter Antonio. Different cities, different days, different victims, but the pattern was unmistakable. She'd hitch a ride or get picked up. The man would drive them somewhere isolated. She'd pull out a gun. Then she'd shoot multiple times, often as the victim tried to run away. And afterwards, she'd take their car, their money, their belongings, and dump the bodies like trash. When asked why, her story shifted constantly. Sometimes it was self-defense. Sometimes they were going to rape her. Sometimes they were threats. Sometimes they were evil men. Sometimes she claimed she just snapped. But the reality, at least half of the murdered men had zero history of violence and no signs pointed to attacks on her. Police didn't link the murders at first because they happened across multiple counties. But when Aileen crashed one of the victims' cars, witnesses saw her. Police released sketches, and Florida collectively said, "Yep, that looks like the lady screaming at the convenience store last week." The manhunt began. Police knew Aileen had only one real connection: Tyria. So they located her. And Tyria immediately said, "I want nothing to do with this. Please don't arrest me." Detectives made her a deal. They'd protect her if she helped them catch Aileen. They wired her phone. They told her to call Aileen and lead her into confessing. The recordings are almost painful to listen to. Tyria pleads, "I don't want to go to jail. I need you to help me." Aileen, desperate and terrified, breaks. She says she'll confess to everything. She says she doesn't want Tyria blamed. She says she'll take all the heat. This was the moment Aileen's fate was sealed. Not because she was innocent, but because the only person she ever loved made her walk straight into a trap. And she did it willingly. Aileen was charged with multiple counts of first-degree murder. And her defense? Self-defense. But the prosecution painted a different picture. Aileen wasn't a traumatized woman fighting for survival. She was a highway predator, stealing, killing, and covering her tracks. The jury listened to forensic evidence, bullet patterns, robbery motives, the pawn slips she signed, the witnesses who saw her driving victim cars, and recordings of her own confession. They didn't buy self-defense, not for a second. Aileen was convicted, over and over, 7 times. But what shocked the world wasn't the verdict. It was Aileen herself. During interviews, she went from calm to angry to completely unhinged. She said things like, "I'd kill again. I hate humans. I'm going to get revenge. I was railroaded." Her mental state deteriorated rapidly. Some believed she had severe PTSD. Others said she had antisocial personality disorder. Some said she had psychosis. Aileen insisted she was fine, except she clearly wasn't. On death row, Aileen was isolated, alone with her thoughts. And that's when the paranoia kicked into high gear. She believed guards were poisoning her food, torturing her, radiating her with sonic pressure, trying to drive her insane, conspiring with cops to silence her. The guards denied it. Psychiatrists said she was delusional. Aileen said everyone was lying. And then there were her interviews, swirling rants, accusations, emotional whiplash. One minute she was calm, the next she was screaming at the camera. Then suddenly crying about wanting peace. Her mental collapse wasn't entertainment. It was tragic, disturbing, and raw. But the state of Florida wasn't delaying her execution. Not this time. On October 9th, 2002, at 9:47 a.m., Florida executed Aileen Wuornos via lethal injection. Her last meal? A single cup of coffee. That's it. Her last words? "I'm sailing with the rock, and I'll be back, like Independence Day, with Jesus." Aileen died at age 46, and with her death, the story didn't end, it exploded. Documentaries, books, biographies, The Foam Monster, which won Charlize Theron an Oscar. But the question that still divides people is, was Aileen Wuornos a victim of severe lifelong abuse who snapped? A predator who used trauma as an excuse? Or something in between? The truth is uncomfortable. Aileen was a product of unimaginable trauma and someone who became dangerous to others. She wasn't born a killer, but life didn't give her many exits. And the result was one of the darkest, most complex cases in American crime history. If you made it this far, you're part of the 1% who can handle stories this dark without losing your sanity. Hit that like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a deep dive like this again. Let me know in the comments. Do you think Aileen Wuornos was a monster, or a woman society failed long before she failed others? See you in the next episode.